Hello and welcome guys, it's the mid-season review. Yes, we're into race week finally. It's been a long few weeks, hasn't it? But we're off to Zandvoort for this weekend. Before that, we're going to do a season review and look at how badly or great some of the teams have got on so far. As we just passed the halfway stage of the season, round 12, 10 more to go, and it's a perfect time to see how everybody's fared so far in the season. And we're going to start from the bottom of the pile and how they've been in the Constructors' Championship. So we're going to start with the team at the bottom of the pile, AlphaTauri. They're on 3 points, all down to Yuki Tsunoda. He absolutely wiped the floor with Nick De Vries, wiped him out of the team, didn't he? Beating him 8-2. It's 1-1 between him and Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo had actually a brilliant recovery start to his campaign, didn't he, at Hungary. Belgium, he had a great sprint race but a really poor race, but Yuki Tsunoda, for me, let's get to him. He's been the most improved driver on the field for me. Fantastic job. He's been really consistent, thereabouts in the top 10. Unfortunately just missing out. He's sort of missed the P11, wasn't he, at one point so far this season, and done a really good job, and actually to beat Daniel Ricciardo in the race in Belgium shows, you know, he's still in this fight, and it'll be, if season almost restarts from here now, doesn't it, up until the end of the season with his battle with Daniel Ricciardo. And if he can beat him from the end of the season to the end of the season from here now, I think that will really propel Yuki forward, and potentially into some bigger seats going forward from there. You know, the Red Bull outfits and teams kind of do have a lot of hopes for him on there, and he's stuck at it. He's still got the contract and the race seat. You know, they're ruthless there at Red Bull, as we've seen with Nick De Vries. But the car has been a bit of a stinker, hasn't it, this season? They've really struggled with inconsistencies. They've had the brake issues, which sort of carried on from last season as well, didn't it, over into this season. They're still having problems with that. But they bought the big upgrade in Belgium. Now we've got the summer break. Let's see how they kick on and move forward from there. They've got a bit of catching up to do with the teams ahead, haven't they? They've dropped a few points back. So it's a big campaign from them to try and get off the back of the field. Next up is Alfa Romeo, and they're 9 points as a team. To be honest, the head-to-heads here, a bit of a surprise to me. I thought it would be the other way around with this one, but it's 8-4 to Valtteri Bottas. His best result being the P8 in Australia. A P9 for Zhou Guanyu has been his best result. But actually, I think Zhou Guanyu has really closed the gap on him here a bit, hasn't he? I don't think Bottas has been wiping the floor with him as we saw last season. Zhou's kind of got his in the fight despite them head-to-heads, really, which actually threw me a bit. Bottas, with the experience and where he's been, I kind of expect better from him, and a bit more performance. Well, it's been Bottas that's picking up the points, well, more of them actually because of that Oz P8, but they've both twice been in the top 10s. The highlight really being of the season is the Hungarian P5 for Zhou Guanyu. It's a shame it all went bad at the start. No fault to him. Actually, it was the car issue, wasn't it, that caused that. But I know, I think Valtteri kind of needs to step up a bit, isn't he? He's really eager to kind of hang about and get into the Works Audi team when that comes up in 2026. There'll be change for Alfa Romeo as well. The rumours are that they're going to match up with Haas. More on that in a little bit. But yeah, Zhou Guanyu so far a fantastic season. His now job is to kind of get married up and beat Valtteri Bottas to the end of the season. 10 races to go, a big campaign for him. You know, he's on a 1 year contract, isn't he? So he needs to prove himself to get a renewal onto next season. So it'll be interesting to see how them two play out. But the car's been a bit wayward, hasn't it? You've got the odd good result like we've seen in Hungary, but then they just struggled in the race. A big campaign, but they're still in with the shout, aren't they? With only a couple of points off the two teams ahead of them. So it'll be big to try and get into that P7 battle and try and win it at the end of the season. Next up comes the Haas team on 11 points, joint with the Williams team. And actually, after what was a decent start to the campaign in Saudi and Australia, it's all kind of gone downhill from there, hasn't it? It's 6-all in the team battles. The best result was the P7 for Hulkenberg in Austria. A couple of P10s for Kevin Magnussen picked up the points for the Haas team. But it's been Nico Hulkenberg that's been absolutely mega in qualifying sessions, hasn't he? 6 Q3s he's made it into. As many as Perez actually, which just shows how good of a job he's done there. The P2 in Canada was a real highlight. It's a shame he got the 3-place grid penalties there. But he's the one that's really brought the energy to the Haas team as Nico Hülkenberg this season. And despite getting into good positions, showing the car's got some pace in qualifying, in the race it's really where they've struggled, haven't they? They've dropped back. It's a tyre management issues that they've been really struggling with. They seem to be just so hard on the tyres, and just that's what causes them to sort of need as many stops as everyone else, and they're just falling back to the grid. Kevin Magnussen, on the other hand, he's been a shadow of the man that we've seen last season, isn't it? He was absolutely brilliant, the one really driving force in that team, but he seemed to have disappeared, hasn't he, so far this season? And it's a big second half of the season for them too. Let's see how they can pick up some points. And it's a real close battle with them joint being with Williams, and the P7 would actually be a decent result at the end of the campaign. But they need to sort of try and get to grips with this car and see why they've got a good car there. Obviously they've got the pace in qualifying, just try and need to make it work out in the races, and it'll be interesting to see if they can manage that towards the end of the season. Next up is Williams on 11 points, and they've had a great start to the campaign, haven't they? Absolutely brilliant, finally off the back of the grid. Alex Albon's the one that's been carrying that team. It's 10-2 to him in the in-team battle. Actually, the only two times Sargent beat Albon is actually when Albon retired. In the qualifying, it's 12-0 to Albon, who actually has been really, really impressive, hasn't he, Alex Albon? His P7 in Canada was absolutely fantastic, actually half the points of what Williams and why they're in the position that they are. And he's had some really solid points, finally back in the fight into P10s, and that's really been the driving force on that team. He's actually just needs to cut out a few of the mistakes, hasn't he? Because in Australia is where he was doing really well, wasn't he? It was about P6, P7 at the time when he lost it, and lost some chance of decent points because the car was really quick there, and they're the kind of mistakes what he kind of needs to cut out, because where there's points on the table they actually need to make the absolute most of them. Logan Sargent, he had a decent start to the campaign, didn't he? A decent race in Saudi, I remember, but then been hit and miss, but he's picked back up, hasn't he? He's closed the gap to Alex Albon, a decent British Grand Prix, where it was probably his best result of P13, isn't it, so far? But fantastic for Williams, great to see him off the back. Momentum in that team, isn't there, now going forward? And we'll see how they get on together. Rumours that potentially, Sargent's seat could be under pressure. I doubt it at the moment. I don't think they're as ruthless as Red Bull at the moment. I can't see where the threat, or who Mercedes, it seems like, they use that second Williams seat as the one that they wish to guide in there as their junior team. But I can't see where that's happening. James Vowell's actually done a fantastic job for the Williams team so far. Great to see him moving forward. And let's see how they got on in the second half of the season, but so far it's been absolutely fantastic. Next up is the Alpine team with 57 points on the board, and actually the in-team battle is really tight here, isn't it? Pierre Gasly leading the way on this one, 5-4 to him. Ocon's actually the big highlight, and the best result for the team was that P3 in Monaco. What a fantastic job he did there. But Pierre Gasly at P7, his best result so far in Monaco as well, actually. But Pierre Gasly, I think he's done an absolutely fantastic job, new to the team, and actually beating his teammate in head-to-heads. Ocon, despite, the only good performance I can pick out really is that one in Monaco so far, and he's had a so-so season, I think, as has the whole team. Now it's a big second half of the season. The team that were actually fourth best last year, they've been way off it so far this season, and after the cull we've seen of the senior management at the Belgian Grand Prix, it's an all-new senior department. What's going to happen with their 100 race plan, let's see. That was where they were heading, weren't they? But it's all new for the second half of the season for Alpine. Maybe it's the big refresh that they need, or is it really? I mean, they could lose their way and go even further back. They're quite a big outfit, and they did a brilliant job last season. So surprised they were so eager to just push them out the door when they've seen a few poor performances so far at the start of the campaign. It can happen. Look at Mercedes, but sometimes consistency and working through them issues can be the right way of going about it. They didn't choose that one. But let's see how it pans out. It's a big second half of the season for this new Alpine senior management team. Next up is the McLaren team on 103 points. Actually, what a turnaround of a season it's been for them. They were absolutely shocking and nowhere at the start of the campaign, weren't they? They had a horrendous Bahrain Grand Prix, 17th and a DNF for that team. The in-team battle there, it's 9-3 in favour of Lando Norris. The 3 kind of doesn't show how good a performance actually Oscar Piastri has done. More kind of highlighting how highly rated and why McLaren rate Lando Norris so highly, because he's actually done a fantastic job for the team. Where they were really down in the dumps, he's sort of stuck at it and ground it out, picked up some P9s and all along the way, but now what a fantastic job and the turnaround. I mean, it's kind of what Mercedes should have done, haven't they, early on. They just went, actually, we've not created the best car, we're just going to go in complete direction. Kind of gone to this B-spec of a car, suffered the pain in their mid-races, but they've come back and now they are sort of the second fastest team, aren't they, with right behind the Red Bull, Oscar and Lando Norris, just missing out on pole, wasn't it, Lando, at the British Grand Prix, and a solid race from there, getting the podiums and the P2s, and they now are right in the hunt, aren't they? Not as fast as Red Bull, but it'll take some catching up to do something like that. It would have been something special to, you know, go right up the front of the grid from where they were, but hats off to them, fantastic job. A big end to the season coming from them. Can they keep up this now with the upgrades, you know, towards the end of the season, or are they just going to sort of, how are they going to play this now, because you've obviously got next year's car to consider? Are they just going to keep this concept and sort of move on from here for next season? Let's see how they develop it, but big change for them. Fantastic. Oscar Piastri was brilliant, wasn't he, in the British Grand Prix? Again in Hungary, had a solid race there, and also in Belgium actually his sprint race was really good, led the race at that point, and also in the main race it's a shame it kind of ended so early for him there. You know, it'd be interesting to see how he would have got on in that one, especially considering Norris had a bit of a shocker in that one, didn't he? Kind of expected better from them there, but let's see how they got on Zandvoort. Really looking forward to see how they sort of develop from here going on to the end of the season. It'll be a big campaign from them, because it actually could propel them into sort of, will they be then in the title battle for next season? Let's wait and find out. I can't wait to see what they do with their car. Next up comes Ferrari in 4th place on 191 points in the championship. And actually it's been a bit of an odd season for them, hasn't it, so far? They've shown some real pace, but then had some shocker of a weekends, haven't they? Not sure where it's all kind of gone wrong for them. Started off with a decent start to the campaign for Carlos Sainz, isn't it? A 4th place at Bahrain. It was kind of his best though since then. He's not really had a great campaign. His first 5 races were brilliant, put the manners on Charles Leclerc, and then sort of dropped off since Spain, hasn't he, where Charles Leclerc has actually just kicked on in that Ferrari. 7-5 in Charles Leclerc's favour, the in-team battle there. Charles Leclerc, the brilliant P2, hasn't he? He's had P3s as well, Azerbaijan, Austria and Belgium, where he had a fantastic race, didn't he, holding off Lewis Hamilton. So that car is kind of, you know, they got the pole in Azerbaijan also, hasn't he? So I'm not sure really what's going on with Ferrari. Again, they seem to be like the Haas team, a team that's got a really quick car but then just can't seem to get it on race day. Again, tyre degradation seems their biggest issue. Not surprised they share the same issue with Haas, considering they share so many parts, but a big end to the campaign coming up with them. They're in a fight for P3 with Aston Martin, not too far behind Mercedes if they can get the car right and start picking up podiums like they did in Belgium. A big end to the campaign coming up for them. Next up, Aston Martin, 196 points. What a fantastic season it's been from them. The real surprise, haven't they? Went with the concept of kind of right down the route of Red Bull early doors, and it's kind of paid favour for them, hasn't it? What a fantastic job. Fernando Alonso, absolutely mega. Mr. Consistency on the podiums wherever he could make it. Early on, it's been brilliant. Actually really put the manners on Lance Stroll, hasn't he? And Lance Stroll, is he still there because he's the son of the owner? I mean, if he was in a Red Bull with the deficit in performances we've seen to Alonso, look at Nick De Vries getting the boot, or Aston Martin being a bit soft here with Lance Stroll. I'll let you guys answer that one. Put your comments in the post below, and I'll look forward to see what you've got to say about that one. But actually, for me, he's not really done enough, has he, Lance Stroll? He's only beaten Fernando Alonso in one race, and that was Spain. And that actually, I think Fernando Alonso had the legs on him. He was on the fresher tyres by about 10 laps, and he just sort of let him have it, didn't he? Just to probably as a morale boost to try and get his confidence up. It's not really happened. But since Spain, actually, the Aston Martin team has dropped off. It's been a bit of a shame, actually, because they are one of the teams that up there that have the most wind tunnel time, the most CFD time available to them because of where they were last season, and their in-season development hasn't been great at all, has it? Alonso saying that they've been hit with this new tyre change, with the harder tyre that we've seen from the British Grand Prix onwards, but actually they were struggling a little bit before that, weren't they, as well? So it's a big second half to the season for Aston Martin. Can they get back up to the podium positions? They've got the car under them somewhere, haven't they? It was a brilliant battle in Canada with Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton, wasn't it? Brought back memories of the old times with them two battling up. But Fernando Alonso, what a fantastic job he's done. You know, Lance Stroll, now it's your job to step up to the plate and sort of claim that seat for next season. Although with Lance or Lawrence Stroll still at the helm, I kind of expect him to be pretty safe. But can Aston Martin prove themselves to develop cars in season? And and that's kind of where Fernando Alonso should come into his own and help the team out with that one. And then comes Mercedes, and actually they're on 247 points, and it's been a bit of a revival of a campaign for Lewis Hamilton, having been beaten by his teammate George Russell last season. He's been absolutely on it so far this season. That pole in Hungary was absolutely magnificent. After the early car where they've just sort of said, race one turned up and said we're scrapping our car after Bahrain, kind of really disappointing from them. And why they've not just sort of said we're scrapping it and go in a different direction early doors, I'm not too sure on that one. They kind of should have done what McLaren have done, haven't they now? But let's see how they go. They're not really bringing any upgrades for the rest of the 10 races. They've said the sole focus is on next year. So they're just going to sort of look at refining the car from here on in. The in-team battle with that one is 9-3 to Lewis Hamilton. Shows, he's really turned up, hasn't he? A fantastic job from Lewis. George Russell, he started off really well, didn't it? It was tight between him and Lewis, but then the Canadian Grand Prix where he made that mistake and he sort of derailed him a bit, hasn't it? It's important second half for him to just try and personally just get back on terms and match Lewis. He's been really quite consistent before that, so and no doubts he can pull it off, but I'm not expecting much from the Mercedes team going into the second half, considering what they've said. Is there enough in this car for them to sort of keep pace with McLaren and Red Bull, or are we just going to see them drop off? So it's Red Bull at the top of the table and 503 points. They have been absolutely phenomenal, haven't they? Actually, I think it's Max Verstappen that's been phenomenal. You can say as much as he wants. Yes, he's got the best car, and yes, it's all the car and all that, but actually no, look at what Perez is doing in that car, and I'll get back to Perez in a minute. But Max has shown a maturity and a level that I've kind of not seen from many drivers before. He's been absolutely fantastic. He's not had the need to get in any horrible squabbles at the start of the race, taken his time and just picked him off the rare occasion that he's needed to, mainly in Belgium, I think, where he was, got that 5-place penalty for the gearbox change that he's taken, but it was a given that he would win from there, wasn't it? He's been absolutely fantastic, flying. He's just been phenomenal, and I can't say anything bad about Max Verstappen, and I am by no means a fan, but you've just got to appreciate and respect what he's doing in that car, because not many drivers can do that. And let's look at Perez now, who actually had a brilliant start to the campaign, wasn't he? He was touch and go with Max Verstappen. It's kind of what you want in a second team, and there was hope that there would be an in-team championship battle, kind of like what we've seen with Rosberg and Hamilton a few years back, but it's failed to materialise absolutely catastrophically, hasn't it? After the first few races, when the title talk started, Perez just sunk, didn't he? I don't know where he disappeared to. Yes, Monaco was a particularly bad result with the P16, and that can happen. If you have a bad qualifying, it's difficult to overtake in Monaco. I can appreciate that, but there's been other races where he's been way down field, and he's got the supersonic DRS in that car, and if it was Max's hands, there's no doubt he'd have been on more podiums and second places than he's actually got, despite the poor qualifying he's had. And he's been so bad that actually Max Verstappen is nearly double the points ahead of him in the constructors, in the drivers' championship. And actually, if you take Max Verstappen out of the drivers' championship, you'd say the race for the drivers' title is actually really intense, isn't it? He's not too far ahead of Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton, and that's sort of, you know, Perez needs to sort himself out with that one, because I see he is the one driver at the front of the field where his race seat is kind of really under threat. You know, we've seen Daniel Ricciardo drafted into that AlphaTauri seat. Is this his cameo to show has he got what it takes to replace Sergio Perez again? You know, Yuki Tsunoda, even, he's done a brilliant job at the AlphaTauri team so far. Could he move up and take Perez's seat? You know, Red Bull are really cutthroat when it comes to that. Yes, so far they've talked about that he's a safe seat, but we heard that before, isn't it? Even with Nick De Vries before, he got, no, he's not going anywhere. Bang, off he went. Daniel Ricciardo was in. But it's all, you know, their car. I think they've pretty much walked this championship. They're now got limited CFD time compared to everybody else. They will have again because they're going to win the championship. And so I think their focus is now on next year's car. So it's their hope that, you know, they might not win every single race from the last 10, but who knows? They've been absolutely phenomenal. But that's the mid-season review. It should line up to be a brilliant second half of the campaign with the final 10 races. A lot still to play for, despite obviously the championships all going to Red Bull. In my view, you know, that's a given that. But the battle behind Aston Martin, Red Bull, now Ferrari after their Belgium showing is really, really tense. Even the battle in the midfield, I mean, Williams, Haas, Alfa Romeo, it's a big end to the season for them boys, moving up in the field, and, you know, actually the guys at the bottom, you know, can they get their car turned around? AlphaTauri, you know, they've got big, you know, side partners with Red Bull, and some big changes coming there, isn't it, potentially with the new team change of the name. Alfa Romeo actually and the Haas team joining up, we should hear that announcement in Italy in a couple of weeks' time. So a lot of changes and a lot still on the table for them boys. Let's see how it gets on. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. I'll see you on the next video, which is soon, for the preview for the Zandvoort Grand Prix. Thanks for watching.